Hey miners, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the new home of power mining analysis. In today's episode, Anthony Power and I are pleased to welcome Daniel Koff. He's the co-founder and COO of Rosseau. This is a company that's focused on all things immersion. They've partnered with a number of the key miners that we cover on the channel, and they'll actually go in and work with these mining organizations to design, build, implement, and ultimately deliver best-in-class immersion solutions. Now, before we get into all that in today's video, please take a second, smash the like button for us, guys. It's a huge help to the channel. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comment section below, do you see the benefits and your outlook long-term in this space? Now, with that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay guys, so that's right. Today's video, we've got an exclusive episode for you. We're going to be focusing on all things immersion. This is a popular trend, not only in the Bitcoin mining space, but also in the emerging HPC AI data center world or industry. And we've got an expert here, the co-founder and CEO of Rosseau Group, Dan Koff, to help walk us through all the details, subscriber questions, and the data that's actually coming out from immersion cooled technology. So Dan, thanks so much for being here. A real pleasure and glad you could make the time.
Bryce, Anthony, thanks for having me, guys. Pleasure to be here.
We were just saying before the camera started rolling, Anthony's met you all over the world. I had the pleasure of meeting you down in Nashville, actually at the Hut 8 event, and we got talking about immersion. This is an area obviously very important to the mining community. It helps efficiency, it helps machine life, the length of life on these machines. We had a really good discussion, Dan, and we said, hey, you know what? We got to get this on the podcast. We need the viewers to know about this. So why don't you give us a quick introduction on yourself, how you got into Bitcoin, and how you ended up co-founding an immersion cooling company?
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, so I think I have the award of the most boring introduction to Bitcoin ever, which Anthony will totally appreciate because he's a numbers guy. So 2016, my dad, he's an accountant, comes to me and says, "Hey Dan, there's this blockchain thing, this digital ledger. It's going to revolutionize accounting. You know, you live in Silicon Valley, you're into tech, like you're going to love this thing." So I kind of roll my eyes, like, "Okay, Dad, I'll go check out your accounting, revolution." And of course, found Bitcoin very, very quickly, fortunately for me, which was life changing. So at that point, it was straight down the proverbial rabbit hole for months and months, years. Silicon Valley was a great place to be to learn a lot about that. And then really since then, I became passionately committed to, working in the industry, solving challenges, using technology to serve Bitcoin miners. And then in my spare time, doing a lot I call it make the world safe for Bitcoin. So, educating students, writing speeches for US senators, all these sorts of things. So that was how I found it. And, it's really never left me. And then, I think Rosseau, kind of how we got started. So the company was founded in 2019 with the goal of serving Bitcoin miners who are increasingly experiencing temperature-related challenges. So downtime, high levels of maintenance, a lack of overclocking. And so we solve that with industry-leading immersion cooling that comes custom engineered and then professionally installed so that miners basically have peace of mind and continuously stable operations. So that's a little bit about, I guess the benefit of immersion as well, but where Rosseau comes from and, how I found myself in the space.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. You're one of the few guests that actually went after the Bitcoin full speed right at the start. Most of our guests say, hey, I heard about it, then I didn't touch it for a couple of years, came back to it. I wish I got more seriously involved. So you've definitely bucked the trend there. I've also never written a speech for a senator. So a couple things you've gotten over me there. Now, next question. Anthony likes to use this in some of our discussions. I want you to answer this like we're 12-year-olds here. So we want to know, how does immersion work? What are the benefits? How's the system set up? Just very, very basic intro to this world.
Yeah, perfect. So let's keep it as absolutely basic as possible. So the most simple way I can describe immersion cooling is think of like taking your miner to the spa, right? And you just immersing it in this lovely bath. It's in this optimal environment. It's feeling great. It's working great, right? It's just in this beautiful space where it can do its work at a world-class level. That's what immersion really is. You're basically taking the miner and you're actually immersing it into a fluid. It's not water, it's actually a type of fluid that does not conduct electricity. So fancy word, dielectric, kind of kills electrical current, right? So it won't pass that current. So that keeps it safe, right? And then the beautiful thing about liquid is it moves heat way faster, many multiples faster. In fact, orders of magnitude better than air does. And so if you just think first principles, right, just physics, no opinions here, right, by utilizing liquids, you're going to remove that heat from those miners. And that heat is one of the fundamental constraints on the performance of that machine, how much computing power it can do, on the efficiency of that machine, right? Which of course are the two key levers that miners are looking to optimize at all times. And then on the reliability as well. So by introducing liquid cooling, you get greater overclocking capability. You get more stable thermal temperatures. So your miners are basically content, right? They're not fluctuating in temperature, which can lead to damage. And the efficiency is also much higher. So it's kind of that ideal spa day for your miner, right? And in that environment, right, it can basically do its best work, be really stable, low operational headaches, low maintenance, and really just an overall better performing operation.
Dan, just so obviously machines going into this fluid, which doesn't conduct electricity. In air cool systems, obviously you're trying to keep the temperature of the machine down using maybe fans and things like that. What happens to the fluid though when the machines are getting hot? Does the fluid get hotter, or how do you sort of like dissipate the heat from the fluid effectively? Because that's where the heat will be going from the machines effectively. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So basically what happens is, and for those on video, this will probably be a little bit easier to follow, but basically you've got the miner that's sitting inside of this immersion tank or multiple miners. You're putting cool fluid in at the bottom, this oil or dielectric fluid. It then rises, right, and basically passes by the machines. So this is using basically convection and stratification, right, where you see that heat rising. And when it does that, it's passing by the chips that are inside of each of these miners, and it's absorbing the heat from those miners, right? And you're basically continuing to pump in that fluid. So both the pumping action as well as convection stratification causes the fluid to basically pass by the chips, and then it exits at the top, right? And then is basically returned back to a cooling system where that oil or that dielectric fluid is recooled. And once it's recooled, it's then once again injected back into the bottom of the immersion system, where you basically rinse and repeat. So you repeat that cycle of basically taking that cooler oil, running it past the miners, absorbing that heat, and then being sent back for recooling again.
Is there any opportunity? I mean, this has just come to me as you were talking through there, explaining it. But is there any opportunity to sort of like utilize that heat for maybe other types of for other heating systems? I mean, we know there's miners in Sweden that are using their heat energy to provide energy to, say, greenhouses or the local community. But where you've got sites, and we're talking now, there are some big sites with immersion cooling. Bryce, myself, very fortunate to go to the Corsicana site and look at what they're doing down there. And they've got two separate types of immersion cooling systems in their facility. But these are big facilities, these are 100 megawatt facilities. And I suppose we didn't ask the question at the time, but is there anything that maybe on the horizon or in the future they could utilize some of that heat, or is it a case of not really? The process is that it will cool down with the water and then it goes around the circuit. But I mean, be open to your opinions on what possibly can be done.
Yeah, for sure. So the application you're talking about, Anthony, it's called waste heat capture or heat reuse. And you're absolutely right. This is a big trend. It's going to be a growing trend. I think especially within the world of data centers, more traditional data centers, there's actually a lot of regulation that's coming through, especially in Europe, where data center operators are basically forced to introduce waste heat capture. And then it's got lots of applications. So what can you do with that heat? Well, you can do things like district heating, right, or in building heating, or in floor heating, right, where you're basically taking warmed water, right, which would have been basically warmed by the oil, right, passing by each other inside of coils. So the colder water is absorbing the heat from that oil, and then that now warmed water is basically being sent into, for example, the flooring inside of a building, right, to give you effectively free heating, right? So you're leveraging that excess energy that's coming out as heat from the mining operation and putting it into, keeping your bills low for, your interior heating. Number of other applications, could be used for, things like, breweries are increasingly using it, right? That's a fun application. I'd love to do more immersion installations at breweries.
That's the last thing you need at Corsicana, a brewery next to that site with 500 construction guys who are sort of like putting in 12-hour shifts. Straight to the bar, boys.
The busiest brewery in Texas.
Yeah. I mean, happy workers are productive workers, but probably a balance there. But yeah, exactly. It's a great technology, to really be sort of efficient in that way. Definitely lends itself to kind of more sustainable types of practices. So I do think we're going to see that increasingly. I don't think every miner or every company using liquid cooling is going to be doing that. Really, you want to be obviously the heat's got to be consumed locally, so you'd have to have some application that's right there on site.
There's a cost to the benefit, that they're going to have to look at, and let's be honest, miners will want to do something that's positive, but they'll also not want to be doing it at a loss. They don't want. I mean, they might. The positive story could be if they could do it for like break even, utilize the heat, and they get paid for what it costs to actually deliver it. Then I think some of them would use that as a social responsible story, which highlights the positivity of Bitcoin miners, because this industry needs as much good press as it can possibly get out there, because I think the press that's coming out at the moment doesn't paint it in the right way, and we should be trying to deliver that. But yeah, I think with margins at the moment, you don't want to be spending excessive money doing this. But if there is a sort of like a benefit that covers your costs, and it gives the communities something that they require as well in terms of heating, in terms of facilities that they can use that reduces the cost of those. That's really clever for the miners to do that, and socially responsible as well. And many of them, constantly highlight what they're doing in that space. But yeah, thanks for that. That's really good.
Yeah, now, totally.
Dan, I want to talk about the topic of how this technology is applied in HPC land versus mining. I also want to talk about the different applications that Rosseau has available to clients or potential clients. But one thing you touched on there, and I wanted to highlight this for viewers, is the oil and the water never actually make physical contact. So a lot of people might think, oh my God, oil and water. You're right in describing through those tubes, the fuel kind of the heat kind of dissipates. My question to you there, though, is if all of this equipment and the rigs are in this fluid or petroleum oil type of substance, if they need to take those out to do any repairs or anything, how do you actually get all that fluid off of them before you're working on them?
Yeah, so really good question. I mean, I think the way I'd start with that is what we have seen is that because you're addressing with immersion cooling and liquid cooling, you have the opportunity to address the key challenges that result in that type of maintenance that you're describing, Bryce. So, fan failures, right? Very common in air, dust and debris accumulation. And then a big term here, thermal cycling, which is basically this idea of the miners getting hot and cold as the air temperature around them changes. That physically stresses, that thermal cycling physically stresses the boards and is one of the main causes of miner downtime. So right off the bat, one of the beautiful things about immersion, right, especially really power dense immersion cooling, like the Rosseau system, you've got the ability to keep thermal stability, right, avoid that thermal cycling. You don't have dust and debris because, of course, the device is immersed in a fluid, and you don't have fans. So you knock out the top 3 reasons why devices go down. So your maintenance is incredibly low. And I'll just cite a statistic. One of our largest clients has been operating with our system for over a year now, 2 summers, right? 99.9% uptime, right? Not including grid curtailment. So all their miners just hum along. And by the way, that's at a 40 to 50% overclock, right? So just continuously generating maximum value from their miners, right, with minimal intervention, minimal interruption. So that's one of the big things, right? I mean, there's definitely a need to, basically get rid of that oil if you're going to be doing some repair work. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? You can still kind of, get at, various things, unscrew various things. You might want to make sure that before you plug in the cable, right, there's not a ton of oil sitting there, so you can pop it in there, right, when and if maintenance issues do come up. But by and large, it's an incredibly rare event, provided that you've got a well-engineered immersion system.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to build on that, or you also mentioned HPC.
I was
Go
just
ahead.
going to say the hot and cold thing. We see that a lot with our roads here in Canada, and I know it causes
Yes.
some problems there. So you're saying not only is the maintenance drastically reduced, there's no fan, there's a lot of these problems just simply avoided.
Yeah,
Another thing that Jason really told us was a main draw for Corsicana and Riot was the extension of the machine life itself. So
absolutely.
as you guys know, the capex to buy these machines is extremely heavy up front. Anthony, I think most of them are 3-year depreciation, are they, on the rigs?
It varies company to company.
Okay.
Some started at 5 years. I mean, a company should be depreciating machines over its real life. Now, the argument will be and it will articulate what you just said, Dan, about you're extending the life of these machines because of the environment that they're in. So, in theory, if a company is depreciating properly, they should have a longer life. For those mining companies that have got immersion cooling as part of their business, they should have longer
Gotcha.
depreciation periods. But there are sort of like reasons for some miners. Some miners do it over 2 years, and we're still using S19s now, and they were up 3 or 4 years ago. So,
That's
but
what I was going to say is regardless of the period, once that depreciation's done, if these miners are still rocking in your tanks, Dan, that's just straight cash to the company, right? So do you have any stats on that side? Obviously, your uptime, you said 99% barring any curtailment. Do you have any stats at this point on machine life?
Yeah, we do. And actually, there's great data both in the Bitcoin world that we have, as well as data that comes out of the HPC world. So yeah, I mean, it's so much to talk about there. I think I wanted to briefly touch on your point about the buying fewer miners if you're doing things like overclocking. So you're 100% right, Bryce. If you are overclocking the miners continuously, right, to hit your terahash targets, you could, for example, buy 35% less miners while still hitting those targets, right? Which more than pays for the upfront capex, or the difference in capex between the air setup and the immersion setup. So right there, you're actually ahead, right, in terms of your capex per megawatt. If you've got great power costs, if you can basically, and if you've got a great immersion system that gives you that overclocking capability. I think that's, a really important thing. And then when it comes to the device lifespan, really important stat here. This comes out of a magazine called Mission Critical Data Centers, but lots of other places you can look it up. Overclocking does not damage high-powered electronics. So as long as you maintain a thermally stable temperature and the optimal temperature range, you can overclock your miners and you will not cause any damage to them. The same with your HPC devices, right? That's just a fact of computer electronics, right? Great temperatures, stable temperatures, you can increase the clock speed, right? You can drive them harder, and you can do that without damaging the lifespan. So Microsoft actually put out a white paper recently showing that they're overclocking GPUs upwards of 15% in immersion, and those devices still have a longer lifespan, Bryce, than an air-cooled server that's not being overclocked. So just to recap that, you have an air-cooled asset. Let's say we're talking traditional GPUs. It's a 5-year server. It's going to last 5 years. It'll be an 8 to 10-year asset in immersion with overclocking. So that's the power of liquid cooling, right? Of power dense immersion cooling, is you're getting rid of that heat. You're going back to, you're in your spa day, right? You're in that optimal environment, right? The device is just super happy. So it can work harder and it can work longer and more efficiently than ever before. With very, very few trade-offs. I mean, it's a really remarkable technology and optimal for your Bitcoin miners and your GPUs as well.
So, I mean, if we go back to, I mean, this is a story that's been going around for 3 or 4 years. If you look at the mining industry in North America, you look at the likes of Sheldon Bennett from DMG Blockchain, who came out with the immersion cooling study 3 or 4 years ago and talked about the savings of energy of upwards of 25% and the overclocking ability of these machines. And he was probably being prudent when he said you could overclock by 25%. I mean, I physically saw videos. I've lived in Kazakhstan for a number of years. I saw videos of machines in Kazakhstan where they were overclocking 50%.
Yep.
And yet, 4 years later, we've got a number of miners out there that are utilizing immersion cooling, and we've never had 1 ounce of data. There's never been any sort of like indication that they're providing more production, or actually, if they are, is it highlighting how bad the production is in terms of competitors? Because if you've got a part of your business that's doing well with immersion cooling, is it sort of like carrying the air cooled part of the business? And I asked these questions 2 years ago. I mean, the Helios site went up in May. It was like May the 9th in 2022 when Argo completed that. And never got 1 ounce of data out of them, never got anything from Galaxy when they took over the facility in sort of December, January 2022. I've been chatting with Jason for the last couple of years with regards to the immersion cooling at Rockdale. Now, bear in mind, they lost the immersion cooling facilities there. 2 of the buildings were sort of like, out of action for about 13 months because of the weather damage in December 22. But we always hear these stories about talking about the benefits of immersion cooling. It's like a textbook, but we've yet to see in the North American mining industry, and I have seen it in other countries. So Kazakhstan, I was physically seeing the data, and the guy was quite clear, showing you the machines, showing you how the impacts of the overclocking and the benefits of doing that, and actually the benefits of underclocking as well. Not necessarily about, we talk about we want to get more, but there are significant benefits of underclocking. Maybe come to that, but it's more about when do you think we'll start seeing data from some of these publicly traded miners? Because there must be quite a number now who've got immersion as part of their setup. I mean, even like some CleanSpark have got a small amount of immersion cooling. Marathon have got immersion cooling in their joint venture in Abu Dhabi. And when I spoke to Fred Teal last in London, he was telling me they were looking to go quite significant into immersion cooling. In fact, in 2 years ago when I met Fred the first time, he said that immersion was going to be the next big thing, and he wanted literally 100% immersion cooling.
100%.
He hasn't even got 100% of facilities yet, so it was still sort of like trying to get to that point. But it's like we hear the story, Dan, but we never see the sort of like the outcome of the story. We're still waiting for the ending or the bits in between. So maybe you can sort of like shed some light as to when do you think people are going to start understanding the results of this thing?
Yeah, Anthony, great setup. So it's already happening. And by the way, welcome you guys to join us at our site just outside of Austin and Taylor, Texas at any time, where it's well over 40 degrees today. It's a hot day. We are overclocking our devices over 50%. So just for one data point, the M66 from WhatsMiner, a beautiful device. It's a stock 268 terahash device. So you plug it in, OEM normal settings, stock 268. We overclock that to over 400 terahashes, routinely 24/7, constantly, even in the hottest time of the year. So it's very real. Our clients are doing this today as well. So the data doesn't lie. It's already there. By the way, to that end, we've had the CEOs of the biggest ASIC companies come by. They've confirmed like they've never seen performance anywhere like this. So I think it goes back to really one important thing, which is immersion in itself, of course, as a technology is great, but it has to be done right. And so one of the things about Team Rosseau, we are data center infrastructure experts. So we actually, to properly serve Bitcoin miners, we have a team who've actually designed hundreds of megawatts of data centers for Fortune 500 companies, some of the largest, 4 of the 10 largest data centers in the United States. So we couple great data center engineering plus our world-class immersion cooling infrastructure to solve those temperature-related challenges for miners, the downtime, the inefficiency, the maintenance, the lack of overclocking. So done right, I think there's tremendous value. We can prove it out, hundreds of thousands of hours of runtime. It absolutely exists. To your other point, miners are doubling and tripling down on immersion. It's only going in one direction. So, this year, MicroBT's CEO said this will be the year that liquid-cooled devices surpass the sale of air-cooled devices. That number will never go in the other direction, right? It's only going to go up, right? Just like Bitcoin, hopefully. It's going in one direction. So, and that's just, again, back to good old physics, right? Liquid moves that heat better than air. So we're going to continue to see it. And I think you're going to continue to see miners, CleanSpark, Marathon, your point, Galaxy, right? A lot of others, won't name all the names, but moving to liquid cooling. And I think really over the next kind of 12 to 24 months, the idea of doing a new build and being air cooled, you're going to look a little bit archaic, quite frankly. And if you look at the most efficient and most powerful miners that are on the market today, both from Bitmain and from MicroBT, they have a power density that exceeds air. So if you really want to continue to push efficiency and push the performance, it's going to take liquid cooling going forward. So yeah, I would say immersion is still emerging, right, Anthony? So it's not everywhere just yet, but I think we're at a tipping point. We're at a very exciting time. This is true of data centers as well, where you basically got a flipping happening with respect to that move to liquid, and it's all being driven by how powerful these computers are becoming.
Being based in Texas, obviously you've got some of the biggest mining facilities not that far away from you. Yep. And I know there's a couple of miners there, even some of the non-public miners. So Jamie McCavity's company, Cormint, I think they're 100% immersion cooling.
They are.
And they tend to get really good numbers from there. So in terms of what they produce and how much they're literally using in energy to produce a Bitcoin, they pretty much get to the top of the tree in terms of compared to the Bitcoin miners. And I've used some of their data to compare sometimes. So it really is good what he's doing there. You mentioned the MicroBT, and that's interesting because when we went to Corsicana, Jason told us that the MicroBT now are making machines fit for immersion cooling. So whereas before you'd have to take off the fans and these other parts of the machine before you put them into the to the liquid, MicroBT have gone one step ahead and are doing that. Are you seeing that from other suppliers now going down that route, or a MicroBT at the moment leading the way in terms of developing for the future of mining?
Yeah, they're all going that way, every single one of them. So yeah, Bitmain's doing it with the launch of the S21 immersion. Orodyne's doing it, Block's doing it. Basically, everyone's going to have a liquid cooling strategy. Anyone who's building ASICs, it's going to be essential for you to really continue to be competitive.
Seal miner has to by name, doesn't it? The seal miner has to go in immersion cooling because it's a seal miner. Otherwise, why would you name it seal miner if it wasn't fit for immersion cooling?
Come on, Anthony, we can do better than that, bud. We can do better.
Hey, I mean, it's just the name's out there. Dan, just one last one on. I mean, have you? Yeah. I mean, being in Texas, have you managed to actually visit Corsicana?
Yes. So I mean, not myself personally.
And the reason I'm asking you is because if you, when we're not going down the route of asking you to name anyone you're working with, but purely as an interest for you guys, seeing not just one type of immersion cooling there, they've actually got two different types of immersion cooling, and from your sort of like your knowledge of immersion cooling systems, how do you see the Corsicana site turning out over the sort of like next 12 to 18 months? Do you think that's going to be the sort of like the flagship site for miners to look at in the way that if you want to set up a business in using immersion cooling, that's the way? Or do you think there's going to be challenges? And bear in mind, many miners have had challenges with immersion cooling up to now. It's not been a sort of like an easy ride there. Hence, we haven't seen all the data. But from first reflection of looking at Corsicana, what are your views on what they've got there, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, no, really good question. I mean, for starters, I think the Riot team is an exceptionally capable team, so I think they're going to do great. I know they've definitely had, a lot of learning that's gone into what they've created, and I think that's going to serve them well. And they've got a head start. So, there's a great wind at their back. They're working with a great machine in the WhatsMiner device. I think there's, I've got real strong, thoughts about what they're doing. In addition to that, it's interesting you say that because they're not too far from us. There's a number of miners who will do a visit, throughout the area, right, to the various sites. We usually tell them, come to the Rosseau site at the end of your day, right? Go and see the other sites first. And routinely what we find is they tell us that the performance in what we're doing, right, nothing comes close. So I think they're doing great, and at the same time, I think there's definitely room for improvement with a better implementation of immersion. And we really do have that track record and that pedigree, including our CTO. He was actually named the leader of immersion cooling requirements for an industry body called the Open Compute Project, which Facebook, where I was originally from, was a founding member. OCP, Open Compute Project, sets the data center standards. So he was unanimously elected on the back of basically the debut of our immersion system, which is a power density record, not just in Bitcoin, but really within the computing world. So I say all that to say, I think, Riot's definitely on track. They're embracing immersion. They're not looking back. They're going 100% liquid. It's the right answer, Anthony, 100%. Are there opportunities for them to improve their infrastructure? Well, the data doesn't lie. We definitely have the ability to give them, that leg up. Same thing with other miners. And, it's a really simple process. They give us a call. We give them a quote for a complete custom engineered solution and facility layout, right? And then our team comes to their site and does the installation and commissioning. So this is an accessible technology today and an accessible competitive advantage that I think anyone can get into. Riot's doing a good job, but I would say, miners who've been hesitant because they're worried about the complexity or, how they would set it up or whether they're going to have to do a lot of engineering and tinkering, they can forget about all that. It's a really simple process for them to get started at this point with world-class infrastructure.
Is size an issue for you guys in terms of project? I mean, Corsicana is enormous. I mean, those buildings, like you say, 100 megawatt buildings each there. When you say it, I mean, does your team come on and project manage it, or does your team come on and deliver it in terms of it's your team, not the construction team of Riot Platforms who would be putting in the actual the engineering together?
Yeah, so number one, we are definitely set up for scale. We do all of our manufacturing in Texas. We are also, picking and choosing, projects selectively, working with certain partners who have a great long-term vision. Really where I think there's great alignment and really serving them in every way we can. Yeah, so to answer your question around scale, we're definitely set up for scale. We do all of our manufacturing in Texas, and can do a very large volume on a monthly basis. So yeah, no concerns with respect to helping Riot achieve their timelines. With respect to how we actually engage on the project, we do everything from turnkey, Anthony, where we take it off your hands, right? We work with you to design the site layout. Give you everything that your electrical and mechanical engineering firms would need to stamp those documents, right? And then we go to work, put it all together, do that installation, do the commissioning, give the teams all of the training that they're going to need to operate this and really generate world-class results. And then it really doesn't stop there. Like, it's a partnership, right, with Rosseau. So if they have issues, if they have questions, they can always give us a call. We're always available. We really aren't doing this on a small scale, right? The goal is a close partnership for a long period of time to help these clients scale up. So it's in our interest to, bottom line, make sure that they are successful and getting great results. So we stay in their corner. We make sure, both pre-installation, post-installation, that they're world-class hashing. So that's how we do it. And if, for example, they are saying, hey, we've got a lot of people on the ground, we want to leverage our own teams, we'll actually train them on the installation process. So then we'll do kind of call it a hybrid installation where our teams are doing it alongside of their teams. We're still signing off on every single step and every single check to make sure everything's done properly. So you still get that, guarantee, that certainty that it's being done right, but you can also leverage some of your staff, accelerate things, save some costs.
Yeah.
I like that term, world-class hashing, and the spa day for the miners. Dan, we've learned so much today. You can see, obviously, by the length of the interview, the amount of questions Anthony and I have. I feel like we could talk for hours about this. We'll definitely have you back in the future to kind of take a deeper dive. But in terms of an introductory to your company, to what Immersion's all about and some of the benefits, I think we've definitely accomplished that today. I was also going to take you up on the offer to come down to Austin and see the manufacturing facility, but you'll have to find an immersion tank for me and Anthony because it's a little too hot down there in the summer months for us, buddy. So you'll have to come up with some sort of suit. But in all seriousness, thank you so much for coming to the channel today. Very informative, very educational. I'll leave a link to your company website, all your details in the video description below. If there's any miners or operators watching this channel, watching this video, you want to reach out, Dan's a great contact and can help you out with all the immersion services. Dan, I'll flip it back to you for any closing thoughts, and then I can wrap up for us.
No, I think that was perfect, Bryce. Thanks for the time, and you guys are a beacon of great information, great signal in the space. So I appreciate you having me on. I think my only message would be just going forward, like we're going into a more liquid cooled world. If you're looking to create a Bitcoin mining farm that's going to last for the future as miners get more powerful, you need to be avoiding those temperature related challenges, downtime, maintenance, lack of overclocking. That's what we do. We solve that problem. So if you're struggling with those problems or you want a solution to those problems, we've got that for you. We can definitely give you something that's going to make sure you get the results you want. And then if you think about the future sale, I know you guys focus a lot on the stock prices, the future sale of these sites. It's my view that you're not going to see miners as interested in picking up air cooled sites moving forward. I think liquid cooling and properly engineered liquid cooling sites are going to fetch a much greater premium, much higher multiple going forward, as they really are setting those miners who are acquiring them up for success. So I think it's time for people to be looking at embracing the future of immersion and liquid cooling. We're here to help, make sure you guys are successful. So look forward to hearing from anybody, and thank you for the time, guys, and we'll talk to you guys again soon.
Yeah, it's definitely a great point. Not all megawatts and exahash are created equal. We'll get into that more in our next video as well, Dan. Thanks so much for the time. If you guys are still watching, hit the like button. Feel free to subscribe. If you have any immersion related questions that we weren't able to get to, I'm sure there will be a few. Leave them in the comment section below. We'll make sure we pass those along or add them to our list for next time. Dan, Anthony, always a pleasure. We'll see you guys here tomorrow.